Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fourth peer review. Today is the turn of our dear German project partner from the Lower Saxon European Ministry European Affair Ministry, and I will shortly leave the floor to Sisi to introduce the best practices and the ministry she's representing. Welcome to all of the stakeholders joining us today. I'm seeing that you all are here, so that's good. The agenda of today foresees that we will witness 3 case studies presented by our German partners, and after that we will have a short presentation by our technical assistance scientific group regarding the synthesis document that was expected to be produced in the previous month, but due to the fact that some activities of the project were moved ahead, we had to slide it, and today you will witness the presentation of the first benchmark of the case studies. As you already understood, as of some weeks, we have we formed a scientific group, so we will be helped in the management of and the prosecution of the Dialog project by this scientific group, represented by some people I see here in the chat today, in the meeting today, Lorella and Stefano Boffo, and maybe I don't see Francesco Gagliardi, but maybe he's connecting, and they will introduce themselves later on in the meeting. Just a brief note to the project partners. After the meeting, I invite you to remain in the room because we have some short communication regarding the project, and we received this communication by Interreg Joint Secretariat yesterday night, so it was 8 p.m. So I don't see Sisi. Maybe she's. There are so many people here, so maybe
no, I'm here.
Hi, Sisi.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
How would you like to proceed right now? I would like to remind that we have this double room of translation. So we have the channel English-German, German-English, and the second room, which is represented by the Spanish flag, but is actually Italian, English, English-Italian.
No, I would just go on and just welcome everyone, go very quickly over our agenda, and then give, our minister a possibility to say some welcoming words.
Okay. I will proceed launching the video of the welcoming words. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I will just say a couple of words. So hello everyone. As well, for those who don't know me yet, my name is Sisi Iklunati. I am the project manager for Dialog in our ministry. Our ministry means the Lower Saxon Ministry for Federal and European Affairs and Regional Development. And I'm really happy that we are going to be able to present ourselves to you and to show us how special our ministry actually is, because we take stakeholder participation very seriously. And as you will see throughout the case studies, we always try to reinvent ourselves when it comes to bottom-up stakeholder participation and finding new methods. So we will start with a very quick welcome of our minister, as I've already mentioned. Then afterwards, the head of my unit within the ministry, Dr. Kirsten Meyer, is going to present the ministry a little bit to you so that you get a broader view of what we are actually doing in our ministry just in general. And then afterwards, we are going to enter into the case studies. And those case studies will really allow you to see the very broad participation processes that we start. So we will start with our EU funding strategy that will be presented by my colleague Christoph Lahner. He will show you the bottom-up process of defining the strategy, which means including as many stakeholders as possible in order to create a strategy comprising all EU funding in Lower Saxony that allows us to use EU funding in the most efficient way. Afterwards, my colleague Antje Overmaier is going to explain to you her approach to developing or setting up the RIS3 strategy in Lower Saxony, and how we are planning to go on with the monitoring and evaluation process. And what I can really say is that she was able to set the bar even a little higher in our ministry when it comes to methods of stakeholder engagement. So that's going to be very interesting as well. And then afterwards, we will present our own funding instrument that we are really proud of. It's the social innovation policy instrument that my colleague Thomas Schleifenegger is going to present to you. And it's a very interesting funding strategy, not only because it is a way to foster social innovation processes within Lower Saxony. It has been hugely successful because also of the setup of the funding strategy, which means the different parties that are involved when it comes to setting up the funding. So yeah, it will be very interesting. It's a very colorful, I would say, set of case studies that are going to be presented to you. And yeah, just if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. And then I would go on and let our minister talk for a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Dear project partners, dear stakeholders, it's a great pleasure to welcome you to our online peer meeting. We all would have probably preferred to meet in person. Being able to get a direct impression of the case studies, it's a privilege that we have come to appreciate very much. Corona presents us with the challenge of adapting our previous habits and activities in all aspects of our life. The re-evaluation of familiar structures was the reason of the Dialog project, even before Corona. As the Ministry of European Affairs, the exchange with stakeholders concerning the coordination of European funding instruments is the focus of our activities. As you will see later in the case studies presented by my staff, we are constantly investigating new ways of exchanging ideas in order to promote the active participation of very different stakeholders from across the entire country in the political processes. Dialog helps us to learn from and with our European project partners. This allows us to further review and, where possible, to creatively remodel our approaches. In times of seriously increasing nationalism, a project like Dialog strengthens the European idea because it fosters a critical exchange of our respective approaches. With this in mind, I wish you very interesting discussions and hope to be able to welcome you personally to Hanover at some point in the future. All the best for you stay healthy.
Jetzt ist sie ausgestorben. Hallo?
Okay, thank you for the introduction and the welcoming words. So next in our agenda is
Me, I guess. Sissy, am I right?
The head of our unit, Kirsten Meyer, and she will say a couple of words about our ministry in general. So thank you, and yeah, Kirsten.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, right. Because I can't see me talking there. So I'll give you just a short introduction about our ministry, tell you what is special about us and where's our focus. So the Lower Saxon Ministry of Federal and especially European Affairs and Regional Development has a quite special portfolio, which is unique in Germany. Yeah, in most federal states, the EDU department is part of bigger ministries with, yeah, let's say, other priorities. So it's mostly part of ministries of inner affairs or of economic affairs or of the state chancelleries. And well, to give you an example, our Minister for Inner Affairs is also responsible and in charge of sport. But if he goes to talk in parliament or if he goes to an event, they will always introduce him as the Minister for Inner Affairs, and they won't say this is our sport minister. So this focus on a topic like European affairs and regional development, or those both topics, is quite special and makes us quite special. And as I said, we are focusing on European affairs, and this focus is combined with a special focus on our 4 regions in which Lower Saxony is subdivided, and on their specific needs. And our ministry describes itself as a transmission belt, working in both directions, the EU and the regions. So you can see communication and networking is quite important for us, and it's quite important because, yeah, it's in the focus of our minister. It's very important for her, so it's very important for us. And on the one hand, our ministry is transmitting the regional interests and our needs to the EU using, yeah, communication to the European institutions like the Commission or Parliament, and using our federal state representation in Brussels, which is with creating lots of events, well, those times mostly online events. Yeah, our minister also has a seat in the Committee of the Regions, and so we are trying to use that as well. And on the other hand, there is still a need always to explain the EU to the people and to the regions, to explain how the process works, what is happening there on that European level, and what are the consequences for the people, for the regions, and for the different stakeholders. And yeah, for example, or to give you an example, one of the probably most time-consuming tasks for our colleagues in the EU unit was dealing with all aspects concerning the Brexit and its preparations. And the EU, the UK is still and probably will be one of our most important trading partners. And the question whether a withdrawal agreement can be achieved is very important for businesses and for experts of both sides of the channel. So our ministry did not only deal with all these subjects on a policy level, but in order to help citizens and businesses which are directly or indirectly affected by the development of the negotiations, the EU ministry created a service hotline available for everyone, from SMEs to citizens, trying to understand the consequences of the development and on their particular situation. And that was very special. I guess not all federal states in Germany did so, because we achieved calls from other states as well. And one other thing is what we are doing is we also try to make people aware what the EU is doing for them and the regions, and how important the EU is for their lives, and that they all can benefit from the EU and from EU money, of course. And one instrument which is also special and which does not exist in every part of Germany is our co-funding directive. And this was created to support municipalities who are not able to co-finance EU fund projects. So the directive allows those municipalities who need it most, to be honest, and who need EU funding most, to apply for projects and to benefit. And in our ministry, we also have a special focus on rural areas and their needs. And that makes sense, because most part of Germany, most part of Germany, and especially most part of Lower Saxony, is or can be defined as rural areas. So we also have a directive called Zukunftsseum, that might be loosely translated as future areas. And this program is especially targeted to municipalities with more than 10,000 inhabitants, which usually do not benefit from programs for rural areas. And so it was, on the one hand, created to close a funding gap, and on the other hand, to help small and medium-sized towns to operate as anchors for services of general interest in their rural areas. Because rural development is not done only in small villages, but also in small or medium-sized towns as well. So you might have guessed that our ministry is more what we call a cross-sectional ministry, since we are looking on all European political fields and all regional needs together. We don't just look at environmental or tasks or at the economy or social interests. So we have a special view on the European Union and on our regions, and this enables us to identify and to use synergies and complementarities between different political fields. To give you an example, I guess when our Minister for Economic Affairs, who is also in charge of transport, looks at rural areas, and if he is asked, where do you see problems? Where do you see challenges? And he will probably focus on problems in public transport, or on the fact that the retail sector is struggling in smaller cities and villages. But when, on the other hand, our minister responsible for healthcare is asked, where do you see challenges for rural areas? She will surely tell you something different. She will probably say that we need more, and especially young doctors in the rural areas. So we, as a cross-sectional ministry, look at the rural areas. We see all these issues combined and even more aspects. And therefore, we look a little more for solutions out of the box in order to meet special needs of the regions. And one of the instruments which encourages regions and people to think out of the box and connect and network will be presented to you later. It's our Social Innovation Directive. So let me just come back to the beginning when I said we focus on Europe and we focus on the 4 regions of Lower Saxony. And thinking European affairs and regional development together makes a lot of sense, because many of our actions in regional development are financed with EU money. And the three important funds for Lower Saxony are the ERDF, ESF, and EAFRD. So one very important first step in order to use the synergies was to create the Lower Saxon multi-fund program, which is also unique in Germany. And well, what is so special about the program is that it contains the strategy and the focus for our ERDF funding and as well for our ESF funding together in one program. So we were looking for synergies in the strategies and for a thematic focus of investment goals and priorities, like, for example, innovation, reducing greenhouse emissions, or fighting poverty, or investing in education. It is based on the strategy for Europe 2020, promoting intelligent and sustainable and integrative growth. And it contains about 987.31 million euro money divided in 690.79 million euro for ERDF and 278.52 million for ESF. And you will also hear more about that later, and Christoph and Antje will tell you more about that. So I guess this is a good point to end the short summary of the work about our ministry. And yeah, I hope you have a very good meeting and you'll find it interesting what we're doing, how we're working, and our case studies will give you a good impression about what it is to work here. I guess we're doing things a little bit special, maybe a little bit different from other ministries. Thank you.
Thank you, Antje. Sorry,
Kirsten.
Sorry. Too many people working here today. Okay, so I hope that gave you a quick overview about the different tasks of our ministry. And now I would like to give the voice to Christoph Lahner, who is going to explain a little bit more about a very special tool that we used for the new funding period, for the upcoming funding period, which is the EU funding strategy. So Christoph, are you there?
I'm there. Good morning.
I don't know, is it just me or I can't hear you?
Is it working right now?
I can hear him. I can hear you.
Okay, that's good. Sissy, can you hear me now?
Can you hear him? Kirsten, kannst du ihn hören?
Ich kann ihn hören.
Anyone else with problems?
Sissy, kannst du mich denn hören?
Oh.
Oder hörst du gar nichts mehr?
It seems that Sissy may have a problem with her microphone.
Yeah.
So don't get any signals that I shouldn't start.
Because she's writing something, or can you use the chat, Sissy?
I think we can hear you, Christoph.
Okay, that's a good sign. So Daniele, then I just would try to start. Is it okay? I try to launch the presentation. Can you see my presentation right now?
Yes.
Yes, we can see.
Good. Very good. Okay, so as Kirsten and Sissy said, I want to introduce you the Lower Saxon strategy for EU funding. So our case study is not a policy instrument, explicit policy instrument, it's more a strategy. We did in preparation for the operational programs in the funding systems. Yeah, my name is Christoph Lahner. I'm in the unit for metropolitan regions and innovation. And as my colleague said, the purpose of the strategy was to integrate all three relevant funding systems for Lower Saxony, which is ERDF and ESF, the European Regional Development Fund, and the European Social Fund, which are combined in Lower Saxony together in the multi-fund program, which is progressive as well for German states. And we want to integrate as well the EIAR FRD, the European Agriculture Fund for Regional Development. And yes, in this case, we need to start early because, as you all know, the operational programs should be ready or should get ready as soon as possible in these days. And yeah, therefore we need to start early with this strategy and preparation of these operational programs. And our purpose of the strategy was to develop a funding landscape which is optimal, of course, and which is broadly accepted as well. And for this, we need, of course, participation processes. We want to enable a well-coordinated funding, an efficient and well-coordinated funding all over these funding systems in Lower Saxony. And we want to implement a funding environment that fosters an efficient exhaustion of these funding resources. And of course, the last point, which is quite difficult, as you all know, we want to simplify funding as much as possible. Yeah, this means we need to do participation processes with all relevant stakeholders, because we think that this EU funding system, all over these three funds, addresses nearly all parts of society. And for this, we need a broad stakeholder participation, which is honest and targeted, and which is in a bottom-up process. And on the other hand, of course, we want to see the demand side of the funding programs, because this is the only way to develop the funding instrument more efficiently. Our methods of participation, as I said, we needed to start early in January 2019. So we get the decision from the cabinet, from the Lower Saxon government in December 2018, our strategy. And afterwards, we made a kickoff in January with all the ministries and institutions that are responsible for the policy instruments. And afterwards, we implemented the workshops and working groups with the ministries. Several working groups from February to August, thematic working groups. For example, we had climate change, environment, we had labor market, education, qualification as a topic. We had a working group for innovation and economic change, and a working group for regional development. So these were the topics we identified for the most relevant for our funding system. And yeah, on March, we started the first information for our stakeholders. And as my colleague, Dr. Kirsten Meyer said, in Lower Saxony, we have 4 districts. Leine Weser, for example, is the one district where the capital, federal capital Hanover is, then Braunschweig, Lüneburg, and Weser-Ems. And in these districts, we have our offices for regional development, and these offices launched stakeholder information in March, up to 100 participants, to inform all our relevant stakeholder groups about the process and about the next steps. Yeah, and then we started with the broader participation for our strategy. And this was some kind of funnel approach, which means we started with an online consultation in May and June 2019, in which we had over 560 participants from all groups of social interest groups. It was open to nearly anyone. So of course we informed our stakeholders or special interest groups we know, but we tell them they can spread it, the information. So we had a very broad number of participants, and yes, we could collect important topics from them. We could make some prioritizations and define further topics. And yeah, based on these results, we implement the Stakeholder Conference in June 2019. This was an event during the day in Hanover with over 110 participants from the special interest groups, and we had representatives from the DG Regio, which was very good. So we had direct information from the EU. And but the main part of this event was the workshop afternoon, because we had several workshops to our different themes. As I said, climate change, economic transformation, labor market, and so on, in which we could discuss our aims and our objectives. Yeah, this was quite important for the development of the strategy. And we had some method which was very bottom up like, so you could talk very frankly about nearly anything due to the topics in these working groups. So yeah, this was a very important part for our strategy. And afterwards, yeah, we developed the draft of the strategy in our interministerial thematic working groups, of course. We informed the stakeholder in October again about the draft, and yeah, we could finalize this document on November, December 2019. And afterwards, of course, we informed the stakeholder again. Yeah, what was the result of the strategy? We have now a strategy with a guiding theme. Lower Saxony invests in a sustainable future. It's our guiding theme, and we have 3 strategic objectives. Yeah, for example, innovative and intelligent economic change. The second one is environment, climate change, and the third one addresses the regional development. And all these strategic objectives are not explicit addressing the funds, for example, the ESF or the ERDF. They are our strategic themes. So afterwards, we need to check in the developing of the operational programs to address these objectives. And in each strategic objectives, we have 15 operational goals altogether. And for us, very important result is that we got very good feedback from our stakeholders. So we think that as far as we know, that their needs were taken very seriously, and that the strategy tries to incorporate all the viewpoints of the parties. Altogether, of course, in coordination with the regulations from the EU for the funding system, of course, and in coordination with all the requirements we have. But we tried as far as possible to focus on our main topics in this strategy, all together with the stakeholders and all together with their needs and demands. Of course, we need to say that now we are in a negotiation process about the EU funding with all the other ministries, of course, and this is not quite easy. So as you may imagine, so of course we need to monitor the alignment of these policy instruments, and this is quite difficult, of course. So we are still processing our operational program in each of the funding systems. And yes, there's still a lot to do, but a good result for us is that we have these stakeholder processes in our strategy, and we have this strategy combined. Yeah, so far to the strategy, and now I'm very happy to answer your questions. I'm afraid that I can't hear anything. So if
I don't know.
Yeah.
Does nobody have any questions concerning
Great.
the EU funding strategy? If that is not the case, maybe Christoph, you can just, I just have a quick question that is not really, maybe you can just, what was the most difficult aspect when designing the bottom-up process of designing the EU funding strategy, and to get all the opinions and all the different viewpoints on what the main focus points of such a strategy should be together?
I think to focus on the main topics or the main themes wasn't this difficult as we feared in the run-up, because we have some, as you know, we have these requirements from the EU for the funding system, and of course we have lots of demands and needs in the regions. But I think during the process there was a very good atmosphere, especially in the workshop, because everyone was aware that we need to focus on some themes and topics. At this stage in 2019, we thought that funding would be decrease a lot in Lower Saxony, which wasn't the case in the end. But at this point, we thought that we get way less money from the EU. And so there was the atmosphere to collaborate and to think about efficiency and efficient funding system, and to get some synergies between the instruments. This was a very interesting thing, because we didn't expect it in this way. On the other hand, of course, there's a big on the side, this is responsible for this policy instruments, the ministries and the institutions responsible for funding. This was quite different, and this was much more difficult, and still is a little bit difficult to negotiate about this, or the different instruments, because at the end, people love the instruments, as you may know. But of course, it was not so easy to define which are the special interest group and the stakeholder groups. But we were very lucky. We have our offices for regional department, because they have a view on the regions, and so we could define some, because as I said, it's a very broad approach. We have welfare associations and unions, as I said, and the different chambers of commerce and industry, of crafts, and we need to figure it out very very detailed, and this was not so easy, but I think it worked out well. But of course, although there are still processes and it's a lot of communication to do.
Okay, thank you, Christoph. Are there any further questions?
I think that maybe one point that could be clarified is that did you use specific instrument to keep their involvement high, so their engagement high in the process of putting out ideas and discussing and creating new ideas or objective and setting new goals for the strategy?
You mean special instruments in the
definition of, I don't know how, in order to keep their involvement high and to let their flow of ideas come alive.
I think
discussion and putting out, everybody had their objectives and goals, and they put out what they held for most important for them?
I think it's very, very different because we have so much instrument in this funding system, and so many different parties that are responsible for this funding system, and it's very different how the institutions work with this. So there are some funding instruments and some ministries, for example, they are very open for these processes, and they are still working with some kind of bottom-up processes, and some don't. So this was, of course, one aim of the strategy, to implement these methods, to say it's possible to do participation in nearly all instruments. But yeah, it's of course very, very different. And I'm not quite sure how we can go further with the strategy right now, because now we are in a more formal way in the operational program. And of course, this is a model we would do again, but yeah, we need to figure it out how it's possible. But the next example maybe is interesting as well, the smart specialization strategy Antje will introduce, because this is the same question: how can we make a stakeholder process which is sustainable? So how can we go further with this? This is not quite easy, but we need to try. We try to enable it, yeah, and to establish it.
Any further questions? If not, thank you, Christoph, for the introduction to the EU funding strategy. And then I think this gave us a very interesting insight on how you can make as many people give their opinion for bigger processes and broader processes. So yeah, as you said, it would be interesting now to hear Antje Overmaier and her approach to designing and designing the RIS3 strategy that is currently, I think, in the process of developing a monitoring strategy, or a strategy on how it can be monitored in the future. So Antje, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sissy. Good morning, everybody. My name is Antje Overmaier. I also am a colleague of Sissy and Christoph, and I'm working together with Christoph concerning topics of innovation and also metropolitan regions. Let me start the presentation. Oops. Can you see anything?
Yes.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay, because I can't. Okay. Okay.
Antje, du müsstest eventuell noch mal in den Präsentationsmodus gehen. Ich weiß nicht. Jetzt ist es, wir sehen jetzt.
What can you see? Was kannst du sehen? Sissy?
Yes.
Was kannst du sehen? Siehst du meine Präsentation?
Yeah, I can see your presentation, but I think you need to go into the presentation mode. Yeah, perfect.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so now we can start. My topic today is to present you our regional innovation strategy for smart specialization in Lower Saxony. It's the second time that we developed such a strategy. The objective of the strategy is finally to it's a precondition and requirement of the European Commission concerning the European Fund for Regional Development. So this requirement is mainly objected on the political objective 1, a smarter Europe by promoting innovative and economic transformation. And this is, as in Lower Saxony, it probably will consider 55% of the budget of the regional fund for regional development. What was the purpose of the strategy? Regions, so also Lower Saxony, has to identify and to develop competitive advantages and to concentrate on these strengths and to define this within the strategy for the future 7 years of funding schemes. And at first we did a quite intensive analysis of the strengths and the potentials, and furthermore we entered the entrepreneurial discovery process, which is also one of the requirements of the European Commission. And we also, on all these different stages of the development of the strategy, we tried to widely involve stakeholders from all areas. So, so as I said, stakeholder participation was very intensive, and this should show the bottom-up process. So the strategy should be the result of the bottom-up process with the discussions of the stakeholders, and these stakeholders were nearly of all parts of society, as innovation is not only defined as technology innovation anymore. It's a really quite broad definition, also including social innovation. And we also discussed with all the stakeholders the funding programs. We started discussing, of course, the existing funding schemes, but also discussed how we could develop them more efficient in the future. The stakeholder participation process was, I think, also already a part of the process 7 years ago, when the first risk-free strategy was designed or created. But the big difference was within this process that it was much more intensive, in my opinion. So we started in June 2019, last year. We had invited stakeholders from business sectors, from scientific communities, intermediaries, public authorities, and social partners. So we make this kickoff event where we broadly informed about the aims of the process and of our methods. And then in August and September, we invited stakeholders we invited stakeholders to 5 specialized workshops, and therefore we invited, of course, the stakeholders that are involved in the topics that we specialize the workshops in. The topics were circular economy, as this is a very important topic for all of us, I guess. We had workshops on innovation projects, as we have quite important programs running here in Lower Saxony. We invited also the networks, because Lower Saxony, or I think Germany in general, we have quite a big or high number of different networks. Some are thematic oriented, some technology oriented, and we started a process of discussing what networks do we need and how can we organize the system in the future. Another topic was startup culture and also social innovation, as this is a topic that we have already a program, Lower Saxony, yes, but social innovation is still is a topic that needs a bit more discussion, I think, to take care of it. In November 2019, then we started the entrepreneurial discovery process with a workshop, and the main aim of this workshop was to define priority thematic fields. So let's say we started to look into our 4 districts, the NUT2 regions that we have in Lower Saxony, and we tried to find out the main thematic priority areas that that we have to take care of in the strategy, and then we defined one set priority areas for the whole Lower Saxony. So, and that was already the stakeholder process, let's say, where we had the direct involvement, and we started in December to write down the results and to create a draft regional innovation strategy for Lower Saxony. And in April 2000 this year, we had the draft version that was politically adopted, and that's still the current situation. We have the draft version, and this is the basis for the writing of the instruments within the multi-fund program that will be still developed at the moment. On this slide, you can see the whole process again, how we invited, or how the stakeholder participated in the development of the strategy. So at first we started with a kickoff where we had the information concerning the process and what are the aims of the strategy, what will we do with the interactive process. Then we had the workshops where we really discussed challenges, potentials, suitable measures, instruments, and discussed this very intensively in our workshops with the different stakeholder groups. And at the end, in November, we had the thematic discussions and the identification of priority areas. And so finally in April, we could publish, let's say, the draft risk-free strategy. Looking at the results of the process, I think the most important result is the definition of the 7 fields of growth. And we also found out that we need one cross-sectional field, which is the digital economy. And as Lower Saxony is quite a, let's say, it's not a small region, so the regional topics are quite different. So that's why maybe we have quite a lot fields of growth. With 7 fields is quite broad still. But these are just the fields of growth. In my opinion, it is much more important to look behind, because behind there we have specialized topics defined. And I think this will be the question of how we can integrate these specialized topics into our future programs, meaning do we want to have calls, special calls on specific specialized topics, or can we in other ways emphasize these topics to really get a specialization, as the topic of the risk-free is mentioned. So to get an idea of what I'm talking about, for example, mobility has, for instance, those 4 specialized topics behind. It's individual mobility and logistical concepts, is vehicle construction and maintenance, as of course Lower Saxony is very famous for the VW cars, of course, in whole Europe, I guess. And so these topics are very important for us. Autonomous systems is one of the specialized topics, and also alternative drives and synthetic fuels are a specialized topic. And for instance, for the maritime economy, it's modern shipbuilding, it's green shipping, it's autonomous shipping, and also logistics. I'd like to finish my presentation with this slide. The risk-free strategy is still a draft version. I think the EU Commission will compare the strategy with the instruments that we offered in the priority 1 objectives, and then we can have a final version, let's say. And what we are developing at the moment, as Christoph already said, we are really want to have a continuous monitoring and evaluation process, and therefore we also would like to integrate the stakeholders, because many of them were really very much engaged in the process, and they really got or delivered a very good input. And that's why, of course, we would like to keep the process alive and make it a living process, also concerning the definition of the specialized topics. This will be something that we have to mutually develop with our stakeholders. So, well, that's it from me at the moment. Thank you for listening and your attention, and don't hesitate to ask questions. I hope you could understand. Are there any questions?
Yes, my name is Francesco Gagliardi, and I'm the coordinator of the scientific group of the lead partner. I want to ask you, in your presentation, you say that the actors that are being involved are public sector actors, research actors, business actors. But I have the impression, but I'm not sure that well being understood, that there is not the civil society in among the actors that you have included in the definition of your strategy. That is something that might be you have the idea to involve later or not to involve in the follow. I don't know. I wait, and this is my question. Mm-hmm. When I speak of civil society, I'm speaking of consumers, associations of consumers. In some way, the people that are the destination of the innovation strategy, and it is especially important in social innovation, as you know, mm-hmm. the involvement. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your question. It's a good question because it's sometimes it's quite unusual, I think, it needs to think over the Tellerrand. So I don't know if you know this is the German. So you need to think a bit broader, of course. And we try to take care of the social partners as well, especially in the kickoff event and also in the specialized working group on social innovation. We always invited social partners, but to be honest, the people, you know, this or you know, the inhabitants, this we didn't invite. So it was more people that really dealing with this topic and kind of interested in. So yeah, maybe in the future we can. Okay, this could be a bit, yeah, a bit more intensively designed. Yeah, you're right. And it's a very big request of the Commission as well, I know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that something that in Italy that where you have some examples that are good attempts where you invited these social partners?
We're looking for it, but
Okay.
in not in RIS3, but for example, in the development of the strategy of the SEF or RCF or the other funds, we try to include the voice of the civil society, especially in the local development. There are quite a lot of good experience. One of these has been presented in the first meeting, and it is the experience of internal area, where there was been a very important engagement of civil society. I have another question, sorry, that with the experience of this RIS3, one of the difficulty, or we say the lack that has been found in Italy is related to the fact that there's been quite important engagement of social partners, of stakeholders, more or less the same stakeholders that have been included in the definition of the strategy in Germany, as we used to say. But there has not been a real engagement of stakeholders during the development and the using of the RIS3. That was one of the, in my opinion, one of the most important things, because the monitoring of the RIS3 has been only done by the public administration, but there has not been the engagement and the voice of the stakeholder. Maybe that this is what it happened in Italy. I don't know if also it is the same situation that you have found in your experience. And if yes, in which way you are thinking to engage in stakeholders in the second phase of the project, that means the realization of the RIS3. Thank you.
Yes, and that's also a good question, because as I tried to start to explain on the last slide, this process of the monitoring and evaluation, but also the definition of the specialized topics, this is could be a quite good start to involve stakeholders also during the realization of the strategy and the programs. And that's what we start to discuss. Let's say at the moment, which is the best way to use, for instance, networks that we really have many of in Lower Saxony, or other institutions to use them or to engage them in this process, and to really find out what the different regions need on concerning topics. And but we also have always this discussion, we don't need topics at all, because we would like to get financing for all the things that we would like to do, and we don't want to close the doors for a topic that is maybe not just open in a call, let's say. So but this is really we are really in the beginning at the moment. What we had already in the last supporting in the last period, we had an advisory board of the risk-free, and within the advisory board there are also parts from quite a few different stakeholders, as not only the authorities, but also some social partners. We also had some environmental partners, and so it's not I think this is something that we could make better in the next period. Of course, we could verbessern, make it better, but we are just discussing and starting to discuss how we could really strengthen this process. So
thank you. If I can do another last question, that is just a specification. You say that we are very interesting in know how you act in order to improve the engagement, the activation, the engagement of the stakeholder. In other ways, what kind of tools or instrument have you used during the workshop? Because you say that you have done quite a lot of workshops with more than 50 persons, and I'm really curious, how have you able to give voice in workshops so big to everyone? So in other words, have you used tools as Focus or Lego system, or I don't know which are there are quite a lot of different tools that might make favorize the activation of people during a workshop. Thank you.
I think 50 participants was not the case for every special interest groups, and we were very intensively discussing about the methods of these workshops that we hold. And what we did was we divided the groups, the participants, and within 3 groups or 4 groups sometimes. And within these smaller groups, we really tried to develop and to discuss topics that we already prepared in advance. So it was a really very effective process. And I think that's something I mentioned, or I realized myself, that it is so important if you organize a workshop that you think about the methods, what do you want to define the aims, where do you want to get with the partners, with the participants, and to define the methods of how to get there. And this was not really easy, and we tried, we needed, I think, 2 attempts, but in the end we really had very effective workshops with really, really concrete results. And so this is something that was really, really good, I think. And it was really not a big event, so it was really workshops where the people within the small groups then really they participated, and there was a really lively discussion going on. So that was really, really good. But I see your point, of course. And it's much easier if you have smaller groups with at least I think 8 to 10 people per group to really be effective in discussions.
Okay, thank you. It's just to say that this question is related to the fact that it is methods and tools is one of the part where the Dialog project have a specific focus, because you know that at the end of all this project we have to develop a model, some kind of theoretical model, say that we make use everywhere in order to improve our action plan. So that is the reason for which I insist on this.
Okay. Any further question? So
I just have a very quick question, because since I've been a little bit of an observer when it comes to the process of setting up the RIS3, I was pretty amazed about the methods you use. So maybe you could describe a little bit 1 or 2 methods that you used when it came to doing the discussions and to organizing the workshops.
Actually, I'm not really the expert on the methods, but I can try to explain. What we did was to create at first a very open-minded discussion process. So to leave the buts behind the door, let's say. So we mainly started mostly started with a discussion of collecting input and let everybody just give an input on specific questions. And what we did is we used, because it was before Corona, we could really meet. We had these.
Buenos días, Teresa.
We used the papers, and we already had prepared the papers in advance. It was very specific questions, and for instance, in the entrepreneurial discovery workshops, we made these diamonds of topics. Maybe you have seen them on the slides, where we put some examples of priority thematic areas that were or came out as a result of the analysis. But in the discussions, we had the partners from the different regions of Lower Saxony, and we tried to find out if there are topics missing, or if we need other topics. And so we got a quite good picture. And so it was a bit different in each workshop. And in the end, what we did was to have the small groups, and in the end we brought them together and to trying to make a summary out of the different inputs that we gained. Let's say. Is that sufficient for your question, Sissy?
Yes. Thank you.
So on this last slide, you can see my contact details. So if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to write an email. And if there are no further questions, thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you, Antje, for your very interesting presentation. So, yeah, another presentation that shows how important stakeholder participation is for our ministry, and how, you know, the different people working in the ministry are really searching for new ways of interacting with the different stakeholders. So, now we're going to our funding instrument, the Social Innovation Guideline. And I would like to see if Thomas Schleifenegger is present. Herr Schleifenegger?
Yes, I'm present.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, as I've already said, it's a funding instrument that our ministry is particularly proud of. So yeah, without further ado, I will let Thomas Schleifnecker talk. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sissy. Thanks for the warm welcome here in the group, and hello to everyone. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to present our guideline social innovation we were developing 5 years ago here in the house. I was asked to give you an overview about what we're doing with that guideline, and I was also asked to have a main look on how we deal with stakeholders, how you should deal with stakeholders. I can't answer you the question how you should deal with stakeholders, but I can tell you what we were doing in our guideline. So I will start with a short overview about the guideline itself, what was the intention and how we do running it. And finally, I will have prepared a sheet to explain you how we involve the stakeholders in this term here. I had another slide. Where does it come? Scroll, maybe. Yeah, here. This slide was meant to give you a short view and on the point, why does the Ministry of Regional Affairs run guideline social innovation, which you probably would expect more in the Ministry for Social Affairs, maybe. Kirsten, the first overview, told you something about the main political aspects, what we are doing in our house, so I could skip that. Just want to show you here another time our point when we're looking at Lower Saxony from the regional perspective is that we have a very strictly growing regional disparities in the country. Do you see my mouse? Yeah, you have here Lower Saxony more or less in the north, and this is a map showing like population development. Blue means shrinking, red means growing, and you see we do really deal with very, very different regional developments. So we have really very dynamic growing regions in the west, and we have really heavily shrinking regions in the east, which gives us a lot of challenges on the regional level, which ends up in kind of spatial planning territories. Here on the right hand side, blue says that we have areas where we need to maintain the access to services of general interest, to social services, all of these discussions. That means we need to stabilize things. And from that perspective, we are always looking for instruments to help regions to deal with their regional problems. These problems are very different. A challenge in one region is maybe not a challenge in another region. So we know we have to look very specifically at the regional needs. And we were looking for an instrument using EU fundings to help and support these regions better to deal with their problems. And this is where we came into social innovations. Because it gave us the opportunity to develop and design the guideline I present you right now. So as mentioned, first, we had from the main objectives, our main policy in the house that we say we need to support regional development in all regions, give them chances according to their specific needs. And on the other side, we had like a framework side of the European Commission, where we had increasing significance of innovation itself, where we had a wider understanding of the term of innovation itself. That means beyond technical innovation. And we also had the demand to generally strengthening the partnership principle. And this is what we are talking about here, like stakeholder involvement. So, and we were using the social innovation for that. You see the definition of the European Commission. There's bunches of definitions of social innovation, could be a workshop itself, but we were transferring that for us in an understanding that we were saying, okay, For us, we want solutions for regional problems that solve the problems in a better way than before. And we want to see results in a way that these results create a social benefit or a societal benefit. The innovation itself, we don't expect brand new hot solutions. For us, it would be sufficient to have things that at least deal different than before with challenges. And last thing, we look if you have a transfer possible in the end to mainstream a solution we found. Sorry. How did we set up the whole thing? No. The main characteristics, how we decided, developed the guideline. So we were choosing a very wide thematic scope. That means finally we don't look what we support or promote exactly, but we give a field of action in which the participants can develop their innovative solutions. In that we have a very strict focus on innovation itself. That means in the scoring, when we judge projects, we really look, is there an innovative aspect on it, with the referring to the criteria I mentioned before. They have to refer to the specific regional challenges for sure, and we open the guideline basically for everyone, because we don't want to exclude any innovative potential from the very beginning. The aspects cooperation, networking play an important role for sure, so that's not a surprise. And we did cooperate with our social partners from the very beginning. I will go deeper into that later on. And because what we were doing there was different from anything we did in Lower Saxony before. The whole thing had definitely experimental character. The guideline itself could be called innovative itself. And there were also some challenges for us to design it. Finally it worked, and it was quite a while nationwide, unique. Just recently some others start to go in a similar way. So what do we promote exactly? It's basically, first of all, we support projects. The projects have to take place in the mentioned fields of actions. We have 2 of them. So we were using all the space given by the European Commission for us to fund something. The first field of action is the thing working life in general. That means the adaptation of enterprises, employers to changes in the working field. This is quite wide. And the second one is the whole parts public services. That means maintain the access to affordable quality access to social services of general interest and health system. This is something that is especially important for, let's say, more rural areas or less dense populated areas in the countryside, where we do have these problems that our infrastructure in access to social services does deteriorate, and where we find new solutions just to maintain here attractive life environment for people that still live there. And the second point, what we promote, and this is the thing where also the stakeholders come in, we support free posts, or I don't know the proper translation really. It's service centers for social innovations, consists out of people that help people having good ideas to transfer them and develop them into good projects that finally have to apply for the EU funding, which is quite a challenge. Here we have the active involvement of our social partners. They give professional support for the potential applicants in activating and in initiating projects, and also helping them along their project period. Some technical aspects: the funding rate is 60%. We have now a budget of $750,000 in total for a project, and the duration is a maximum of 3 years generally. How did we implement the guidelines on key aspects? When we started, we had no experience at all. We didn't know if the whole thing would fly or not. So we said we started with annual calls. We have these so-called bodies for social innovation, helping to develop projects. And we do have a two-step procedure for the funding. That means we ask once a year, have a call for interests of expressions to interested projects. We collect them. We are going into a steering committee. And in the steering committee, there is not just us, but there is our post for social innovation. We have other people in there that with them we discuss or we evaluate or judge the projects according to their innovative characters. I will mention that later on again. And this ends up that we choose the projects, the most innovative ones we ask to apply for funding out of the guideline. And for sure, we have different evaluation mainstreaming measures. I don't want to mention that here. What came out in the end? We ended up with 5 calls. In the end, we had 145 expressions of interest in total that were going through our steering committee and ended up with 52 financed or still running, finished or running projects with a total volume of 23 million euro. In the end, for us, this what was starting as an experiment ended up really in a really interesting guideline with a high demand. The demand was growing. So in the end, the experiment worked well because especially of the flexibility we were having into it by not giving us a certain focus on what we exactly promote, but just saying, okay, do whatever you want as long as it's innovative, yeah, in these fields of actions, which gave us the chance also to react on certain changes. Just think of the migration situation in 2015, in 2015, where we could help with projects. Also now with the Corona situation, also here, if we still had money, we also could react very, very flexible on that because it's a new challenge, which you need new ways to deal with them. So we could also help it pretty fast. I guess this was maybe a bit abstract, so I want to just to show how about the scope, what we were funding in total, give you some examples just to see what came out in the end. I'll give a short look at some projects. So we have left above. Victim rescue, that was a project where we're developing application for translation, language barriers at initial diagnosis in the rescue service, also in migration camps, which is now spread over the country. The second one, Telepflege here, that's basically domestic care. That's not like a hot thing. There's something really coming in Northern Europe, very common. But we have in Germany always big problems of data protection items. And this project was looking on that specifically. Idea generally is you have less dense populated rural areas. We have a lack of qualified assistance. And in case you have problems there specifically, you can connect with more qualified people, caretakers or doctors via digital services. The third one, the Social Innovation Center, is more or less a social innovation hub. This is a cooperation of different institutions around here in Hanover, from university over founding networks, student networks, economic support agencies, where you run with an innovative idea, especially from the from the area of social entrepreneurship. Through a trainee program, you get assistance with design thinking methods, with career planning, business plan making, all that stuff. Run a trainee program in order to develop an idea into a business case, more or less. Something totally different. I chose that because that's the most funny thing we really had. We Garden. It's really like on the picture. It's a bio-organic food cooperative, which that's a movement that is spreading up in many places. That local people want to see what they eat and stuff, and they are developing a toolbox with all kind of components from the software, organization planning, all that stuff, legal backgrounds and stuff for interested communities and other places, so that others can use this toolbox just to implement their own food cooperative itself. And last but not least, we have something also like virtual reality for small museums. That's the point that obviously, and especially in the countryside, smaller museums don't have the resources to present their contents in a recent and contemporary way. So there is a system developed also for multi-use for virtual reality in smaller museums, especially to attract younger groups that just today expect these kind of features if they want to visit a museum. This just for some idea of what the range of these 52 projects is. So, and finally, the question how to deal with stakeholders. I made this sheet trying to explain it a little bit. We have here on the right side, I divided between the program level, that's basically us in the ministry. We have the strategic level where we have located the steering committee, where we more or less decide which projects we ask to apply for funding. And we have the operational level where you have basically the projects taking part. On the program level, we have here with the PA, that's a program authority, that's basically us. And you have the SH, that's the shortcut for the stakeholders. In our case, it's the 3 posts of social innovation. Again, that's 3 of them. One is it's the local labor union. The other one is the local business association or employers association. And the third one is the social welfare association. And on the program level, we've been developing this guideline in the fluent interchange together. We had experience from needs of regional development. They have the experience out of the practical work in their association. So we were developing the guideline and finalized it or finished it. When we're having the steering committee, we are part of the steering committee. The stakeholders know the projects because they mostly also develop them a little bit, or at least know the development process. There in the steering committees, we have strategic partners, which is one, the Innovation Center in Lower Saxon, which is the main institution to all kinds of innovation questions. But we also have partners out of other ministries, so-called Ministry of Labor and Economics, and Ministry of Social Affairs. And in this steering committee, as I mentioned before, we get the expressions of interest, and we have an evaluation system, and we look which are the ones we ask to apply for funding. This goes to the projects at the end. And a really positive thing is that we have our posts for social innovation also working on the project level, so they accompany more or less the projects during the project process. They gain experiences, they know what doesn't work, they get what works, and they bring it back on the program level so that we can all together can see if we have to redesign, to reprogram or redesign the guideline next time, or what do we have to change that things work better. And on the other side, these posts for social innovation do have their own organizations, and they can transfer contents, experiences, lessons learned out of the projects into their associations, and they work as a kind of promoters of the new solutions found into these associations. So in total, we do have a small but very functional system of stakeholder involvement in our system. This was a cooperation that had to grow. After 5 years, I would say we do understand ourselves as a team in a certain way, that we work together with the idea to have a guideline that really makes good projects really possible. But each one has its function. So we are responsible still, but we're in interchange, and we are really coming to common conclusions and decisions in our steering committee. And up to now, it works fine. I would say if you would ask the stakeholders themselves, they would have a similar commitment or statement to that. And now we're preparing for the next funding period, and we want to continue. And after all kind of evaluation, we would say we would stick to that system because we think it works. That's it so far from my side. I hope I could give you a short view inside the guideline, and I ask for questions if you have one. Thanks very much for your attention.
Well, if nobody has a question, then I would probably ask one. First of all, thank you, Thomas, for the very interesting presentation. And I would like to know, since you're working so closely together with the different social entities, I don't know, what are the major struggles when finding decisions on what project to fund and what not to fund, or what are the major struggles also in deciding how to bring a project idea to the finish line, let's say?
Oh, I'm still on, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The main struggles are different understandings or opinions about what is innovative or not. In 5 rounds we had a lot of discussions, but we finally always came to one solution. Sure, these associations have their own interests, and each one is interested in also having own projects maybe funded, for sure. But by the scoring, the criteria we always come to a point where we discuss, okay, it's to judge if something is innovative or not. That's quite a quality task to decide that. All of us are no experts in that field, and we have to come to a conclusion. And it's this 2-step procedure does make sense, because it gives us a space where we can discuss free of any kind of control or control system, because we were before having applying for EU funding, where the social and where the control and administrative system starts to work. So we can really openly discuss and say, okay, this is a good idea, but the project design doesn't work. Or we say the project design is excellent, but the idea already exists. And that's the point where we're talking about. But in total, when we started all of us were really very skeptical if this approach would work. All of us, me included. In the end, but in the end, we all learned that it made sense to do it that way, and we all working in a constructive way on the point, trying to develop it further on for the next round, because it's a win-win situation when we bring our administrative background in, and the stakeholders out of their association, if they tell me, the labor union say, look, that's all very nice with innovation, or the one says, look, this project, what is innovative about that? And they can say, look, our association is still in the middle aged, and we're still in the fight between worker and employer. And for us, that's a big step already. So this is something where we can say, okay, if it's like that, then it makes sense. And we're always looking at the potential output of the project, and this works pretty well up to now. And we, as the program authority, are really glad to get this feedback out of the projects. We don't know the projects, we can't know them because we don't have the resources to look at these projects. But when we get the feedback out of the project, what is working or what not, or what administrative barriers are for the project to achieve a better result, this is something when we know that we can try to change it. And so that's a very, very helpful system up to us.
Sissy, I have a question. May I ask?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm representing the chamber in Bulgaria, and in the same time, we are one of the tripartite partners representing the employees. And my questions are related to the origin of the funding. So it's a perfect idea that could be shared, and we can take profit from your good instrument. The question is, apart the ESF funding, are there other sources of co-funding to accumulate the fund that you spend during the years? Because you mentioned that in total it's 23 million euro fund, maybe for the period of 5 years. And the second question is, during the procedure when you open the calls, who are the eligible beneficiaries? Are there consortia or single players like companies who have a sympathetic, innovative idea under the social entrepreneurship field that you can fund?
Okay, thank you for the question. Well, we have the 60% funding by the EU, and the rest is co-financiation done by the project partners. There's no more public money in that. So I would say that's quite a limit you can expect. Like if you go to an enterprise and say, let's develop something where we don't know the output, but you have to pay 40% it's yourself. That's already difficult for some of them. So, but to a question, we have the 6% ESF funding and no more public funding. The rest comes from the participants. We have the opportunity of passive co-financing. So if you bring labor resources in, you can quote that or use that as a co-funding. The participants in the end are the projects we have. Yes, could be enterprises, could be communities, could be individuals organized in a certain way, like this food cooperative. Big variety. We didn't exclude anyone. So, but we have definitely some enterprises, some Stiftung, don't know the English expression for that, fundings. Also, we set a wide frame, and in the end we choose the best ideas. Yeah.
Well, if there are no other questions, I have one very quick question, because you told me also about the fact that the instrument is generally gaining interest in other parts of Germany, and especially in Brandenburg, the instrument has been adapted, but it's not exactly the same. So maybe you could explain on how the instrument needs to be adapted to the different, I don't know, specific challenges or environments in which it's adapted, just like in Brandenburg, or maybe just describing how they adapted the instrument to their particular needs.
In Brandenburg, as far as I know, they did it similar. They just focused on let's say labor market instrument. Especially, they have another component, which means they do not only fund projects but also development projects. Just give a small funding of about, I think, 50,000 euro for a 5-month development period for projects, because they don't have these posts for social innovations, and they notice you need someone. People having excellent ideas are mostly not the ones that are able to write a perfect EU funding project paper. So, and this gap is really filled with our post of innovations, and they don't have that. So they have this instrument of development project, they call it, and they give these 50,000 to develop that with some kind of support. I don't know exactly how they do it, but this is the main difference to that they only reduce on the marketing. I think you can. The interesting thing about the social innovation, like the terminus itself, gives you a lot of freedom to experiment in a certain way, and to get a flexible instrument which can be adopted to many, also to changing situations. So what we learned is really that it really helps to have a quick reaction on changes, on new challenges we have, and this is the real lesson learned for us, that the flexible approach really does work.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yes. I would like to, first of all, I would like to thank about the presentation that I found extremely interesting. And also, I have the impression that there are a lot of stimulus for the Dialog project. I'm curious about an affirmation that you say that on this, you call a regional office of social innovation. Now that have a very important role in all the strategy that you have implemented. Might you describe more in depth how they work, and especially how they act also in the Dialog social that you have described before? Thank you.
Well, at the very beginning, their work was first of all to promote the instrument itself, because the approach was new. Many of the potential project partners were used to get a guideline where they apply for funding for a very defined, specific topic. And now you come with a guideline and say, do whatever you want. It has to be innovative. That's a total change of approach. So they were promoting very much in their organization. They were doing workshops. They have their access. They have their mailing lists, whatever. And then secondly, when we have the call where we say, okay, we ask for interesting projects in 3 months, please present your expressions of interest. Then it's the time when their work really starts, because the enterprises go to the employers union, from the labor aspects, they come to the labor union, and all kind of stuff out of the social landscape comes to the welfare union, and they tell them, is that an idea that could work? You have to develop in this and that direction. Do you have questions? What do you have to fulfill? To come from, as I said, from the idea to something which is written down as a more or less proper thing that finally comes through the steering committee, to make it really simple. And that's their main work. And they've been producing networks within 5 years now. So they know, they got calls, when is the next call? They say not this year, but next year. So they have, and you have meetings, you have regional sessions where you have interchanges, each one in their regions. And now we have kind of a biotop, I would say, regionally, where they know some players, they know what's going on. They can say, okay, it's a good idea, but you're too late. You need 2 more months to develop, but the call finishes next week. This doesn't work. So this is their work. Now we're more and more established, and now their job goes more into the promotion of the transferring of the results into their associations. And recently we're, for example, having the discussion, okay, there is additional European money from the REACT-EU. Do we have a chance to participate here? So, and now the first ones I talk to is them, and I ask, do you have people, projects, questions for funding? Because if there's no projects, I don't have to think about if I could use additional money from the EU for projects if there's no ideas. And if they tell me, okay, we have about 10, 15 projects that could be developed within the next 3 or 4 months, I can come here, I can go back to our house and say, okay, go for it. Try to organize it. As I said at the beginning, we all, including them, were really skeptical if this would work. But in the end, I think each one would say this was one of the best ideas we had to have these posts in several ways, but they make the whole thing running. And I wouldn't in the next round. I would really fight for the point to maintain them.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I think also we all deserve a break after this very intense 2 hours. Thank you, Thomas, for the amazing presentation that allowed us to have an overview about a very, very interesting tool that was developed mainly by you and the ministry. So thank you for that. And I don't know, Daniela, what do you mean? How many minutes of a break do we all need or deserve right now?
I think we can take 10 minutes break and get back
10
at
minutes?
Yeah, 11, 10 past 11. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Feature of the Dialog project. There is an assumption underlying the project. The involvement of stakeholders, as I said, as individuals, group, or social partners representing their sectors and interests, has an important positive impact on social innovation projects. The stakeholder involvement contributes to greater social cohesion, increasing trust, bonds, and social capital, which are all key factors for our community well-being. Moreover, it allows for the identification of the best opportunities, both in defining and implementing the policy intervention, and offers information on needs, conditions, and aspiration of the population. In the benchmarking, we base the analysis on social participation and therefore on social dialogue. And social dialogue is fundamental in social innovation, at least insofar it allows to better meet social needs and leads to a new asset of abilities and relationships, and or to a better use of equipment and resources. So how, here we pose some questions for the benchmarking analysis. The first one is, what are the best ways to organize stakeholders' engagement? The second, what forms can stakeholder involvement take? And how can stakeholder involvement be encouraged and supported somehow? And these are the main issues we will try to respond with the aim of developing an operation plan on the most appropriate ways to identify related methods, procedures, and tools for an effective involvement of stakeholders in all the project of social innovation. So starting from the assumptions that we made herewith, there are some analytical dimensions to take into consideration, and especially to take into consideration when organizing the information offered by good practices and general by cases presented by partners. The first, there are three dimensions substantially: the project idea, the operational design, and the project implementation. The first one refers to the sorry. I'm sorry, I repeat. This is the first dimension. The first dimension refers to three main phases of the social innovation project, within which stakeholder participation is recorded. The three phases are project idea, operational design, and project implementation. I don't want to go into details, but you can read all these features and all the points in which each part of each of the three phases are divided, and they are easily understood. But this is the first dimension we refer to. The second one is the type of stakeholder involvement. We can involve stakeholders in different ways, and we can just inform them, or we can consultate them. We can involve directly the stakeholders, and we can even ask, and this is the highest form of involvement, to collaborate, even to collaborate in every aspect of the decision, including the development of alternatives and the way to identify the preferred solutions. So this is somehow a scale of level of stakeholder involvement. And of course, there is no value judgment in the different ways. We can just decide to inform stakeholders, and that's it, it's good. But we can progress also to different other stages of involvement. The third dimension we refer to, there is an error here because it's written second element, in fact it's the third one. The third dimension dimension are the methods and techniques that can be used. The choice is connected with the results we expect to obtain. And the results can be, for example, define a shared vision of the object and of the problems to be addressed to, or promote a solid knowledge among stakeholders, among public opinion about the project, or encourage the exchange between experts and recipients, or manage the exchange and negotiation between public administration and public and recipients, or also increase the social capital availability. And the social capital is in general constituted of new human relations, the strengthening of cooperation between citizens, and the establishment of a climate of trust. Then again, another result can be expected result can be to build possible scenarios or follow up on emerging proposals. On the basis of the objectives, it is also possible to classify instruments and techniques. So first of all, there are tools promoting the listening of citizens and interest groups through interviews, questionnaires, and so forth. Or we can have practices promoting consultation and work tables, consultation, thematic workshop, neighborhood laboratories, telematic forums, and so forth. Third set of tools are the tools for constructive interaction, user-led design, web-based co-design, creative thinking, and so forth. And eventually a fourth set is made of techniques for reaching shared conclusion and promoting deliberative processes, like, for instance, town meetings, citizen juries, deliberative polling, and so forth. Okay, this is the whole set of possible instruments to be used in order to reach our goals, and concretely, in part of it, used in the different experiences which have been evidentiated and or will be evidentiated by the partners. So we can summarize in the following matrix: methods, objectives, and technique as emerging from cases presented by partners. Of course, the focus is the stakeholder involvement in the different phases of the project. So on the horizontal side, we have the method, the objectives, the tools and techniques used. And on the vertical, we have the four type of involvement: the stakeholder information, the stakeholder consultation, the stakeholder involvement, and the stakeholder collaboration. We can give a, say, a practical theoretical example of it. As you can see, for instance, we can have the case of stakeholder information. The method could be unidirectional flow of information from promoter to stakeholders or vice versa. The objectives can be, for instance, to promote a more solid knowledge among stakeholders, public opinion about the project, and to ensure a shared vision of the aim and of the object. And the tools can be, for instance, some websites or some newsletters, presentations, surveys, and so forth. When in the case of, say, another of a stronger involvement through a stakeholder consultation, we can use a sort of bi-directional information flow, which is that is a flow of information which comes from the promoters to the recipients and from the recipients to the promoters. And it is an information flow which is mainly aimed at collecting opinions and also proposals. But the proposer is not, in principle, is not, say, forced or obliged to integrate stakeholders' opinion into the decision-making process, and it can use as one of the elements, can use this flow as one of the elements to make their final choice. The objectives in this case can be to encourage exchange between experts and recipients. And it is quite crucial in this case, the level of education of participants, because they can say, they can be quite clear in answering or in addressing their information flow to the promoter. What tools can be used in this case? Well, very common tools like workshops or focus groups, even Delphi events or interviews made in open space and so forth. Another form of stakeholder involvement is what we called involvement, in this case explicitly. It's a further step in the involvement, and in which the stakeholders play a really crucial role in generating knowledge, often in a kind of research-driven participation process. The objectives are to manage the exchange and negotiation between public and public administration and recipients, and potential power and conflicts of interest dynamics. Tools and techniques are participatory scenario development, interactive vulnerability analysis, participatory modeling, and so forth. And then the final point, the final level of involvement is the collaboration. In this case, stakeholders are involved in analysis, in action planning, decision-making, or the preparation of policy decision. There could be activity of co-design where stakeholders are involved in identifying and defining the social challenges to face, and participatory development of research programs, application, funding schemes, and so forth. The objectives are to support administration and stakeholder trust with the construction of possible scenarios and the sharing of strategic choices which are aimed at the final definition of the project and or at the implementing the products and all the services which are foreseen in the project. Which are the best tools or the adequate tools for that? Well, again, workshops are are a very good tool, but they should be an integral part of the strategy of the projects, and the stakeholders should be considered as members of decision-making committees, and then you can imagine other instruments. To conclude, I think that this last matrix will be the base for the form we will send you relatively in a short period of time, asking all the partners to say fill it, reviewing their cases there, and so to have an homogeneous material to share. I would say not only in the case of the best practices, but in the case of all the cases you decided as partners to include in the project. Thank you very much for listening.
So thank you, Stefano. In the meantime, I shared the presentation in the chat box so that you can download it and have a look at it. And as suggested, that will be possibly the framework on which the case studies will be further analyzed in order to produce the final model. If there are any questions. So it doesn't look like we have any questions. So one last thing to do before we can free our stakeholders, and just project partners will remain in the room discussing with a short steering committee after this last matter we have to deal with. It is the short introduction by our Bulgarian partners of the agenda and maybe the main topics that will be dealt in a few weeks. So on December 10th, right? Maya, we cannot hear you.
Maya, ne te čujeme.
Избери си микрофона, за да чуваш. Избери си слушалката, за да чуваш. Сега всичко е наред.
Now? Are you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay. Okay. So, first of all, I would like to congratulate you for the good event and to invite you for the next online event, again by Zoom meeting. We would like to organize it on 10th of December at 10 o'clock European Eastern Time. There will be a small change in organization. Chamber of Commerce and Industry Wrocław will be the host of Zoom. Because it will be easy for us to manage. We will have 3 translations. There will be another rooms as we talked before that with Luka. And we foreseen to be again between 2 or 3 hours together with discussion. Because this format of 2 hours, I think that it is the appropriate for us and to be interesting for the stakeholders. Next week, we will send you the invitation for Zoom, and there will be 3 main case studies. The first one will be of one Bulgarian Center for Nonprofit Law Foundation, and there are mainly their main aims are to draft and to implement legislation and policy with the aim to advance the civil society and civil participation. The second one will be, we will present foundation causes, which foundation works for sustainable civil society, and they work mainly with and support young people. The third one is from our region for northwest part of Bulgaria. Again, they are a foundation, and they are the first foundation which has been entered in the register of social enterprises of Republic of Bulgaria. So this is the main information, but till the end of next week, we will have invitation and description. Okay. The change is that we will be the host organizer of the meeting. This is the change. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Maya. Thank you, Cici, and thank to the presenters of today's session. I think that all of the presenters will be available if there are any future question about the practices, or if any has I don't know, ideas or suggestion or needs further information about it. We work always in cooperative mode, so we will share ideas and we will get back to you. Maybe Cici will ease the discussion, the further discussion with the presenters introduced. And okay, is it fine to you, Cici?
Yeah, absolutely. And also I would like to thank everyone for listening to the case studies, and also especially to you, Daniele and Luca, to help us organize the meeting and being there for every question and every issue we had to deal with. So thank you a lot for that.
Okay, thank everyone. Really much appreciated it. Thanking words, and we will remain in the room with the project partners, please. So Cici, Maya, I see Caroline somewhere here, and Ramon, Pepita. We will inform about some communication we recently got from the Interreg Europe Joint Secretariat. It won't take long, so after that we will deserve a great lunch, right? So we'll leave some minutes to let the stakeholders leave the room, and we'll resume the session in 5 minutes. Is it okay?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. Bye.